Welcome back to Empower Your Teen. Today we have with us Deborah Cooper, who brings 30 years of CEO experience from the PR and marketing world to her company, YourCareerDesignLab. She has experience producing other people's stories to garner the attention they deserve. So with Your Career Design Lab, her passion is young adults, and she's been exceptionally successful in identifying and creating young graduate stories in a way that sends their resume to the top. She architects, designs, and curates today's college students' stories and then role plays their stories in ways they can feel it and tell it with passion and conviction. You can see why I'm so excited to have her here. We're going to be talking about initiative, how to reach out and make network connections for young people, so many things. So welcome, Deborah. Thank you for being here.
Oh, Emma, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Would you mind just sharing with us real quickly how it is you came to create Your Career Design Lab?
Absolutely. Well, I've been in PR and marketing for over 30 years with my own company. I had a company called Real Life Communications in New York, where I brought fashion, beauty, and luxury products into the US marketplace from Europe. And then when I moved to Miami, I started Fresh Connect Solutions, which was to come up with solutions, marketing solutions for businesses, people, products, things, you name it. And then about 2 years ago, I had friends calling me and saying, Deborah, Abby doesn't like her internship. What should she do? I'm like, well, she should just go speak to her boss. She goes, oh, no, she won't do that. She doesn't want to do that. I'm like, oh my God. So I would speak to Abby. I go, Abby, go to your boss, write an email, said you came all the way to Chicago to do this internship. You wanted this job. Could you get on another team? Long story short, after a lot of cajoling, she finally did that and went on to another team. And in fact, her junior year was asked to come back with a full-time job. So I just started talking to a lot of my friends' kids, and I saw that there was a gap in the marketplace to bridge that gap between high school and getting into college, or being in college and getting those internships, getting those jobs. And I found that this generation of kids, I'm not saying all of them, are having a really hard time knowing who they are enough to sell themselves. And look, in PR and marketing, I had older people calling me and hiring me to help me to sell them. So I can completely understand how kids would feel. So that's why I started Your Career Design Lab, to kind of bring the 15 minutes of fame, if you will, to young graduates or kids looking for jobs.
I absolutely love this, because you're right. There is a gap in that knowledge. And there are so many young people that, especially coming out of school, where it's very much, this is what we're doing, just come along and, do what you're told. Having the guts to take that initiative may not be so innate, or it could be innate, but it's kind of squashed a little bit just because of their past experiences. And there are some young people that I meet that think it's just not, oh, I just can't do that. But this is a learnable skill.
Yes, it's not only learnable, it is 100% your ticket to open up your journey and your road to success.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so I would love to get some tips from you on, let's start with communicating value, because this is something that is, I think, hard for a lot of people to do, especially when we're in a society that kind of pushes you being humble, which is a good thing. But once you start trying to get jobs or even get into college, you need to start communicating your values. So when it comes to maybe writing cover letters, writing resumes, or even interviewing, what are some tips you have for parents working with their teens about getting used to doing this?
Emma, I'm all about transparency. And I think, especially with COVID, to be honest with you, it's bringing a new level in. It's who are you? What are you? And what I'm finding with a lot of kids, and you brought this up, is, and hey, I do the Fifth Amendment or whatever it's called, but I did it too. Are you getting your resume done? Are you getting your, cover letter done? Did you do the essay? Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Right? Because as parents, we see the road ahead of our kids, but what is so important that they see their road. So it's not like setting up these markers to meet, but kind of going back to the beginning line, to the starting line and saying, hey, I'm sorry, I'm not going to hear you to push you. How do you want to run your race? Let's talk about what values and how you want to run your race. And what I mean by that is, what are your passions? What are you interested in? What would you like to be doing with your life? Set aside that everybody in our families are doctors or everyone's lawyers or whatever. But what do you want to do? And what I typically do is I have this thing I call the to-do list. And it's incredible, Emma, how they go like, well, I'm going to be this and I need to be in this. But once they go to their to-do list and really see what their passion is, a whole new them emerges. And from there, we start to run, start to maybe jog a little bit into the run. And what I mean by that is, like, I had a girl who wanted to be in sales, and this quick little story, but she wanted to be in sales, and she's telling me, well, I've done this. This is what we've taught the kids. I've done this, and I've done this. Okay, well, that says nothing to me. And I go back to the Maya Angelou quote, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget the way you made them feel. So I try to get kids to feel for themselves the passionately within. It might have been when they were 12. It might have been when they're 10. But you know what? Those are your intuitiveness. That is what's going to help you in the future. So we started talking, and I don't know, I just looked at her, I said, I think there's something in your past about sales or something. And she goes, well, I don't know if this helps, but when I was 5, my mom opened up my door a backpack, and $20 bills fell out of my bag. And she said, Sophia, what are you doing? Why do you have this money? She's 5 years old. She goes, and she had to fess up that her mom wouldn't allow her to buy food at the cafeteria. So she would make her salami sandwiches every day and put 5 slices in bread. The kid, Sophia, would sell each slice for $5. So, and that was just what she would do. And she loved the feeling of everybody kind of lining up, because she would then go, this salami is the best salami I've ever eaten. She would sell it. I go, oh my God, there's your story. So you tell me, going into a sales job. So tell me, Sophia, a little bit about, well, I did this job and I did this job. Or she tells the story that says volume, says everything about her. Intuitiveness, sales, passion, being able to sell it. Done. And by the way, she did get every interview that she set up for, telling that story.
I believe that.
Isn't that incredible? So that's one of the things. So I try to get kids away from the linear thinking that schools, teachers, mothers, fathers have set for them, and go back to this wave of just emotion of what they're passionate about, and then take that further.
I love that. And let me tell you why. I tell my clients all the time, a lot of times when you're graduating from high school and going into college, you can often end up just being stats, right? You become your numbers, and that's very dehumanizing. And so college essays and places like, your objective and cover letters are a way for you to bring your humanity back into this process and to really say who you are as a person, and to not just be numbers, And so I love that you have demonstrated that here, but you also pointed out that it's about feeling emotion, right? It's about that's the human element, right? It's about feeling emotion and just getting real and explaining who you are as a person, instead of just being another number in a pile of resumes, right?
Emma, 100%. I mean, when you talk about feel again, and this is something for your listeners and watchers here today, but I had another kid who actually had Tourette's. And so he had a tic, and he spoke, and he wanted to work for one of the large, accounting firms like PwC or Ernst & Young and stuff like that. And I'll be honest with you, at first I was like, well, you got to talk to clients and all of this kind of stuff. But what we came up with is starting a club at his college. He was on the tennis team when he was in high school and college. I said, why don't you get your tennis team and come up with a club called Account for Something. Account for Something, where you go to your local banks and your local accounting firms and say, hey, look, I have Tourette's. I want to be with one of you guys one day, but I'm raising money with my tennis team for Tourette's. He ended up doing that. He ended up raising about $10,000. And if I tell you on his resume and his cover letter that this is something he did, he got hired by every firm. Why? Wasn't his GPA, wasn't his school where he went to, wasn't that whatever. They wanted to, now he brought value. They wanted to bring Account for Something into their job and have that as an annual get together or what have you. That's the initiative that the company didn't even have, but he brought that to them.
I love it.
You know, it's like people who didn't play tennis there, that they want to play with like a pro like he did. It all comes down to humanizing yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love this so much because, like you said, it's also initiative. It's really hard for this age range to take that initiative. And so having someone that they can go to give them permission, you know, a lot of times we don't need the permission, but we forget that, right? So getting permission from a mentor or coach to say, you're allowed to do this. You know, you're an adult now. You can take initiative and let's brainstorm some ideas, just puts them into a whole other frame of thinking that they might have not had the chance to do before.
100%. You know what was really cool about this kid is when we started to work out, going, you know, I'm going to be coaching you. He goes, Deborah, I've been coached since I was 8 years old. And there really was a sensibility when I've worked with athlete people that they know what it takes and the difference it makes to be coached. It does give a different psychological, mental, emotional sensibility that you don't get, quite frankly, from parents, with all due respect, at this age. It is going outside of your kind of homeland. You know, I call it like your hero's journey. There really is something to it where we start at the home, we get those values, but at some point around end of high school, junior, senior year, I had a high school girl who had two brothers, both engineers, one at Cornell and one at U of F. So she's like freaking out. Well, I don't know what I want to be. But you know what? She was a great baker and she loved baking. She was really good, by the way. I gained like 10 pounds working with her. Just kidding. But, you know, and I said, you know what? I think for you, it's so not about finding a school like your brothers to study something because you don't know what you want to study. Why don't we find a school where there is a baking club or whatever? Because if you go to a club and find your peaks there, then your love of learning will stem from that. Mm-hmm. And she's like, that's amazing. She, you know, or take a semester off like you advocate and go to a Wales and Johnson and Wales. See if that's something that you really want to do for a profession. Because sometimes kids who want to sing or perform and they go to these performing schools and then they hurt their leg or whatever and go, oh my God, now I can't do what I want to do. And this is not where I want to be. There's so many variables to finding your fit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that that I love about this process of, you made me think of it when you said people who follow like the performance and then they get injured and then it's like, now what do I do? So many young people feel the pressure of picking the thing that they're going to do for the rest of their lives. And I think we all recognize that it's a lot to ask an 18-year-old to know that, but we're still asking them to do it, right? And so that's something that I work on my clients with is like, let's talk through multiple scenarios, right? And then let's talk about what your transferable skills are and all of your different passions and how can they come together or how might they work alongside each other. That way, because circumstances change, life changes. We know that, right?
That's the only constant is change.
Yeah, exactly. So when you've had the chance to check in who you are, what do you care about, what are your transferable skills, what are all the things that you can do, then if circumstances change enough that you can't be doing this job anymore, well, I know that I would also be okay doing this over here because you've already had the chance to explore that in the past.
100%. And you know, here's the thing. I love what you just said, but change is the only constant. But within all of us, we've got a lot of different interests. And why aren't we stacking that up? Why aren't we aligning ourselves to all the different passions we have and pursuing those? So like you said, if one doesn't work out, it's like, okay, cool. Because also, Emma, in terms of making networking and connections, that's how that's done. You know, you could be working at a job and maybe it's not what you want, but then you can say to your supervisor, you know, is there another team? Because I also am really good at this, or I'd really love to explore this. And they're like, you know what? I actually saw that in you. You would be better suited for that. But you got to know those things about yourself and not be afraid to share them.
Yep. Yep. A great example is that story you were telling earlier about your client who he brought accounting, tennis, and Tourette's all together in one project. Like, how unique is that? Well, that's him, you know?
You know what, Emma? And I'm glad you brought that up, because here's another thing. I have another client who's a singer, went to Berklee School of Music, and he had it down. You know, he was almost on The Voice. He was almost on American Idol. Like, you know, he had tried out, and he's an incredible singer. Here's a perfect example of what we're talking about. But I said, I think, Nick, you've got other qualities. There's other things that you're about. Well, you know, on IGTV, I have been interviewing the basketball players, the Miami Heat players. His dad's like a doctor for the Miami Heat. So during COVID, when they weren't playing, before they were just playing, they're sitting at home on Star Island, like doing nothing. And so he called up like Dwayne Wade and all these people, and they're like, hey, what are you doing? We're doing nothing. Well, can I just talk to you? Sure, we're doing nothing. So on IGTV, he set it up and he's speaking to these guys and he's asking these really good questions. What are you doing now? Well, I'm spending more time with my family, whatever. And I saw it and I said, Nick, you know, this could be like a show. This could be like a show. He goes, really? I go, absolutely. Put together a little trailer before, you know, hard-hitting basketball players making the dunks, you know, potching each other on the tush, like whatever. And I happen to know somebody, and this goes back to the people who are listening. It's not what you know, it's who you know. I happened to call a friend of mine who was an ex-William Morris agent. I said, I got this guy. He sings, he interviews people, he's got a great personality. Would you take a look? He took a look. He goes, this would make incredible content for ESPN or Fox Sports. Because what's going on? Zero. When do we ever get to listen to what these basketball players are really about until they're walking off the court? Now he's got a production deal with a production company who's put on reality shows, and they're working to put on a reality show.
I love it. That's amazing.
It's amazing, but that's the point we're trying to break. He's like, Deborah, I just want to be a singer. It's like, no, you know what? You are a singer, but there's other doors that we can bring you into.
Yeah. Yeah, why not combine passions? You know, I have a client who is really into astronomy, but has also done theater and loves it. So now he's talking about like a YouTube channel about astronomy as a side, you know, an additional stream of income on the side. Why not? You know?
Emma, I'm telling all my clients now, your side hustle is your job. The side hustle today is and can become your career. If COVID's done anything, it's screaming, find your passion and put that to work for you.
Yep.
Because on YouTube, absolutely, you get a certain amount of subscribers and followers, you can be making $2,000 a month just doing your life.
Yep. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. The workforce is changing so much already. And yeah, this year, 2020 has just sped that timeline up exponentially. So yeah, absolutely. Okay. So before we wrap up, I do want to squeeze in talking about helping young people take the initiative, because you're talking about, I mean, kids that have the guts to reach out to athletes and talk to them. I mean, that takes a lot of guts, right? So what are some of the tips that you have for helping young people start to take initiative and reach out to people that it might be a little scary for them to connect with?
That's a great question. I would take baby steps, and how I would take a baby step is I'd reach out on LinkedIn. I mean, maybe first, quite frankly, maybe first start with your parents, friends. Of first, it's that to-do list. It's what am I passionate about? What do I want to during this time? What do I want to kind of inquire about? So I'd be setting up informational interviews. And what I mean by informational interviews, for all who's listening, is just talking. It's just connecting. And so it may be starting with your friends, your parents' friends on LinkedIn or an email. Hi, Emma, I'm friends with, or my parents are friends with Joe Smith. I know that you do this. I, since 12 years old, have been interested in music, let's say. And I actually started my own garage band and I got 10,000 followers within a week. Would it be possible to speak with you about how my skill set might bring value to what you do? Or could you just speak to me about what I need to do to work for a company like yours?
What do you say to your clients who first go, oh, I can't reach out to these people. I don't want to waste their time. They're just going to be annoyed that I'm connecting with them.
Okay, I would say hogwash, because I have to tell you, my 30 years, nothing is harder than calling the Today Show or Good Morning America, and you get a producer on and they're like, hi, Deborah. I'm like, hi, can I just tell you about Emma Perez? You got 30 seconds. Emma Perez is incredible. She does this, she does this, and she does. I'm not interested. Okay, well, thank you. I will call back a couple days later and find out what trends may be going on in the world or whatever, and go, hi, Satina, I know that you said no to me, but I got to tell you something. I just watched CNN and this and this and this, and this is trending. You know what, Deborah? We saw it too. We'll have her on. So I never take no for an answer. And here's the thing. We all create stories in our mind. The stories are just our egos saying to us, we're not good enough. Why would they want to talk to you? And you got to speak to that ego, come up with a name, Susie Q. Say, Susie Q, thanks a lot, but I think I'm safe writing this letter. And the feeling that everybody will get when they do get that response. And by the way, everybody, when you're mentioning somebody that you're friends with or your parents might be friends with, no one, unless they're complete, whatever, is going to say no to you. So that's why I always say, or if you're going on LinkedIn, always mention the person who recommended you. No one's going to turn down somebody who's been recommended to speak with them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another reason why having some sort of mentor or coach at this stage of life is, there are so mmany reasons why it's beneficial, but that's one of them, is to have that, here's somebody that I know, let me connect you. Now we have a common connection, so it's easier to then create that direct connection.
And Emma, what also is really great for kids, which I'm doing now too, is there's so many companies out there. There's this group called Next Gen HQ. It's www.nextgenhq. And it's kids 18 to about 26. And every Wednesday they have a coffee clutch kind of thing, where it's on Zoom, of course, but you're talking to like-minded people. Hey, I just started up this. I'm looking for someone who's graphics. Oh, I do graphics. Hey, let's talk offline. It's kind of like a safe space where you're talking with kids your age who are doing things that might need your help. I've gotten so many kids involved with it. And then from there, they've gotten jobs. Because on their website, then you get their newsletter. On the bottom, it says opportunities. And it's just a great way. Also, tribes, getting part of tribes. I just had a girl who actually just graduated from Syracuse. She's kind of like a bodybuilder, so she wanted to get in that space. I happen to know somebody at U of F who's starting a website called Real Driven. From his past, he had a horrible past, but he's saying you could always pick yourself up and move forward. Now, he just hired her because he's also a bodybuilder.
Wow. Yep. That's amazing. And we all advance through our careers by making these connections. And a lot of times we have coaches and we have mastermind groups, like you said, and tribes. So why not get your child off to an amazing start at the beginning of their college life or the beginning of their adulthood by getting used to it's okay to reach out and receive help from a mentor or from a group of people. Put yourself among people who are trying to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish.
Oh, Emma, I love that. And I have to tell you, I get testimonials from kids all the time, but the ones that are just even, I don't think greater, because it's always great, but are from parents thanking me. Because you know what, and to be honest with you now in retrospect, I wish I had had that for my daughter, because I think our relationship would have, during that time, could have been so much better for her and for me. And that's the thing, at this age, we've got to step out of the picture so that you can be a friend and be there to catch your child or whatever, or to be a support system instead of driving the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Because all they're going to want to do is get off, and it's just going to follow on deaf ears. And so parents thank me for helping their child get to where they needed to go, and that their relationship's intact.
Yeah. Yep. I've had similar experiences myself as well, particularly with, I do have a few clients that have a path other than college that they're considering, and they have a hard time finding support because everything is so college minded that it's like, where else can we go to get support for this adjustment in their life,
Emma, and I have to tell you something. I love that you brought that up, because it comes to mind that my parents, God love them, really let me live out my dreams. And what I mean by that, and this could be for a lot of your listeners, is I went to University of Arizona. It was the only college I could get into. Let's just face that. And I didn't like it. It was the wrong fit. So I begged, borrowed, and steal, used my PR. When I talk about PR, it's like at 18, I did a whole PR campaign to get back to LA. I ended up going to USC, and then I was asked to go to Europe. And for 3 years, I was in Europe, and I was in the fashion kind of business. And when I came back and went to NYU and finished NYU, I started my own company. And when I worked for a bunch of different companies, but then when I was ready to start my own, it just happened to be the time when European fashion was coming into the US marketplace. Now, who do you think was the only company that could actually talk about their company? Because I lived it. I may not have been able to buy their clothes, God knows, but I could talk the talk. I could say, I lived in Paris. I lived in Milan. I know your clothing line. I know what your brand looks like. I'd love to bring that to the US marketplace. I was the biggest PR company that brought in European fashion to the US marketplace, because my parents said, what do you mean you can't finish school in 4 years? What do you mean? They said, go and live your dreams. Mm-hmm. My career was based on my parents allowing me to live out my dream.
Wow.
That became my reality, my career, and a successful one.
Yeah. And that can be scary to do, because we have a certain narrative, a certain storyline that was applicable in generations past, right? And all that's changing now. Like, we don't know what the narrative is. We don't know what the story is. So it can be really scary to be like, okay, yeah, just go do your thing,
Yeah, just do your thing. Because if it's coming from, when I was in Europe and working, never did it enter my mind, oh, well, this will be great because one day you're going to open up a PR and marketing firm in fashion. No way, no how. I had no, if somebody said that to me, I'd go, I don't know who you're talking to. But if it comes from within, it comes from just following your gut, following your passion. The universe somehow truly does provide you with the thing that you're most aligned with. And that when you're aligned with your passion, then it actually does take the fear out of it, because it's not even a question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's when we question our motives that fear sets in. But fear should not set in when you're just following what it is that you are convicted to and passionate about.
So how valuable to find something that will allow your child to start to make that connection, that connection to internal motivation, right? because school is so, most of the time is so externally, that's all external motivation, right? So when we can help our children learn how to connect to our internal motivation and, you know, what's unique about them, that can be a guiding force through the whole life, even as things change.
Absolutely. And during this time too, Emma, as we've said, college are scrambling right now because look at, it's all PR and marketing and no one's a better spin master than me. And that's, with the exception, I got to be honest with you, like a Harvard or Yale or whatever, all schools have just leveled their playing field. And this is the time for the Phoenix to rise. And who are the Phoenixes? But these kids.
Yep.
It's no longer about the school that you go to. Look at all the jobs that are out there, Zoom and all these things. Do you go to a class to learn how to do Zoom? No. And if you look at what is really driving this world right now, quite frankly, is nothing that anyone could have learned in school.
Oh, yeah.
And I had kids in the beginning, who were ready to get their $65,000 and $100,000 a year job. It was right like in January and February. It was so interesting. And then COVID hit. But I knew of a company that was helping the elderly during that time in New York, and they were calling it Senior Strong. And I said to them, you need to work for right now. You're living at home. Everybody's living at home. And go and use your graphic design background for this. Go and use your social marketing for this and your digital marketing. They did that for about these last couple months. If I tell you now, they were able to get the job of their dreams because when the person said to them, what have you been doing during COVID, which everybody's going to ask you, they could say, oh, I did a startup called Senior Strong and I developed the website. I did this, I did that. You're hired.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't sit and watch 10 episodes of Friends.
Yeah. I think it really comes down to giving our kids permission to, I call it falling down the rabbit hole with their interests. Let them go down the rabbit hole and put their attention and their time into that and see how they can, and anything. Like I heard a story about a young man who was doing a study abroad in Russia and got sent back, right? So he spent his time back here teaching himself Russian just on his own, but he was able to put that on a resume as an independent research, and still say, this is what I did. And it was because he had that internal motivation to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what's so cool right now is that anybody's passion, anything that they want to do can become their profession. I'll be honest with you. If I was, I wish I was sort of living in this time because I would have brought out a lot of things that maybe I wouldn't have thought of during those times.
Oh yeah. I have a client that I'm working with now that just didn't go back to college this year because she just couldn't handle the distance learning.
Of course.
And she knows what she wants to do, but she was so scared to take the year off. And I'm like, no. This isn't time out. This is bonus time. This is extra time that you would not have had otherwise for you to explore what it is that you want to do in a completely different way. And within months, she just was so thankful that she had been doing this, Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know what? Like this Real Driven, it's really interesting. This company that this kid started at U of F, he's still there, is really kind of a master class for 18 to 22-year-olds to drive, like I say, their realness and steps how to do that and different motivational techniques and things like that. That's another thing I'd say to your listeners and watchers today is that it's so important for kids today to get more mentally in touch with their head, if you will, and the voices that they maybe have been listening to and start to cultivate their own voice.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, comes from mentorship. It comes from coaching on how to align themselves with their own voice, because I think during high school and then going into they really don't have a voice. And that goes back to what you were saying before about not being able to reach out. Well, how can you reach out when you don't feel like you have a voice that A, and B, a voice that has anything to say.
Right.
That's where I would love to, what I work on with my clients, and how to articulate that.
It's so important. It's so important. I love this. I'm so glad that we met and that we got to connect and just have this conversation for parents and for families. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. You know, this is my jam. I love speaking about this.
Me
And
too.
if you and I can both help anyone out there, parents or kids alike,
Mhm.
then we've made a difference. And it really, that's what it's really about, is making a difference.
Absolutely. So tell us how listeners can connect with you.
Absolutely. They can connect to me by going to my website at www.YourCareerDesignLab.com, or reaching out to me. Email is info@YourCareerDesignLab.com. And today, Emma, what I'd love to offer is anybody who wants to explore a little bit more about what we're talking about today, a parent who has a question of maybe how exactly I work, or a kid who said, I've been thinking about this. I'd love to offer a half-hour complimentary consultation for your listeners, to just explore a little bit where they might be able to go from here.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. So all they have to do is reach out to you and say, I saw you at Empower Your Team with Emma B. Perez, and you'll know.
Absolutely.
Perfect, perfect. And I'll make sure to include all those links as well so they can get right to you.
Super. Thanks so much. Hope you have a great day and stay safe.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.